limited potential and baffling paradox.
58 times 1,510.
Genius takes root in strange places.
87,580.
Can you tell me what that says, Steve?
It can flourish in seemingly barren ground and blossom earlier than thought possible. The price of true genius can be painfully expensive. Relentless pressure and loneliness can be par for the course. Can you buy genius at a sperm bank? Some couples are trying. But just how far will parents push the scientific envelope to create a genius baby? More and more adults are taking herbs and minerals in the hope of increasing intelligence. Want to read 25,000 words per minute? Increase your IQ by 20 points? To define genius in our time, we must first look back in time. In the Renaissance, society celebrated genius as a rare intellectual prowess. Talent was special, but genius was exceptional, a thing to be revered. The inspired individual, wild-eyed and disheveled, with a vision beyond ours, is a romantic image found in fact and fiction to this day. The lone and distracted intellectual will ever capture our imagination. But what exactly is genius? Is it, as Thomas Edison once said, 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration? Perhaps poet Ezra Pound came closer to a good definition when he said, genius is the capacity to see 10 things where the ordinary man sees one. Professor Howard Gardner of the Harvard Graduate School of Education has revolutionized his field with his theory of multiple intelligences.
As human beings, we've evolved to have at least 8 or 9 different kinds of intelligence. Usually the ones that we talk about when we talk about intelligence testing are linguistic and logical intelligence. So a poet like Emily Dickinson would have a lot of linguistic intelligence. A mathematician or a scientist like Einstein would have a lot of logical intelligence. Musical intelligence, the Beatles, Beethoven, the examples of people who think musically. Spatial intelligence, a painter like Picasso, an architect like Frank Lloyd Wright. An athlete would have a high degree of bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Interpersonal intelligence, understanding other people, military leaders, political leaders. And there may be an existential intelligence, asking very fundamental questions about what it means to be alive, what it means to die. Religious leaders, people like Christ or Buddha, would be individuals who would excel in existential intelligence.
Sometimes when many brilliant individuals coalesce in one place, they can act as a collective catalyst, sparking whole societies to blazing creativity. As we cross borders, is genius valued differently? Is a man who invents a better way to catch fish any less of genius than a NASA rocket scientist?
Different cultures will have geniuses, but they don't use the word genius. I mean, genius is basically a European word. We have more of an emphasis of, let's be avant-garde, let's be shocking, let's do something that's inexplicable. And we even say that if you can't understand it, it shows you how good of a genius you are because it's unintelligible. And for a lot of Eastern cultures, that doesn't make any sense. If you can't be understood, then what are you communicating? What are you expressing?
In many other cultures, creative talent is not the exclusive domain of the elite. Everyone is expected to contribute in some way.
In some cultures, everybody gets involved in dancing. Everybody performs an instrument. Everybody carves. Everybody weaves baskets or weaves textiles or whatever it happens to be. That creativity is something that's spread. I mean, look at gamelan music, for example, on Island Bali. Everybody is playing together in unison. You don't have soloists. You don't have virtuosos. You don't have prima donnas. You have everybody working together as a community. In other cultures, the whole culture is creative. There's actually some studies that show there's more creativity in so-called simpler, primitive cultures than there is in our so-called advanced cultures. So civilization doesn't always go forward. Sometimes it's a loss.
Because they live in a world apart and see in new ways, often they take us along and change our reality. What we pass by every day and consider as ordinary, they make extraordinary. What we dismiss as impossible, they make real. Their inspired creations have resonance and influence in their time and beyond. But how can we know when we're staring into the face of true genius?
In the case of art, over the long run, there's a high degree of consensus. I mean, you take the area of music. You know, people are not going to argue that Mozart or Bach aren't any good. People aren't going to argue in the arts that Michelangelo or Raphael aren't any good. But it takes a passage of time before we really can see what's innovative. The whole point about genius is you're seeing the world in a new way. That's what it means to discover a new truth. That means it's not going to be easy for you to communicate with people who are seeing things in the old way.
Being blessed with that extraordinary vision casts the genius in an air of mystery. Nowhere is that mystery more paradoxical than in the case of savants. They astound us with incredible feats of memory, dazzle us with breathtaking performances, and yet they fail at the simplest of human tasks. Next, we'll explore this mysterious form of genius. Genius.
March 1st, on a Friday. What years does that come in?
1901, 1907, 1912, 1918.
Their skills rival computers and leave the world astounded and baffled. Savants achieve perfection at one specific task and fail at countless others.
And it is an island of genius in a sea of disability.
What does this genius in isolation tell us about how the brain works? Does the savant focus in on a specific problem the same way a genius does?
Genius means somebody who has skills, cognitive skills, over and above what the normal population has. Savant skills are quite different because in savants, when we say autistic savant, we mean somebody with autism who has these unusual skills that don't match with the cognitive disabilities that they have. I mean, they have severe cognitive disabilities, and yet they have these unusual skills that are striking.
George and Charles Finn could identify any date imaginable.
July 19, 6,870, that will be on a Saturday.
Faster than was believable. They were called the calculating twins.
July 19th in year 132,470. You figure this one out.
July 19th, that will be on a Saturday.
Neither twin has an IQ higher than 60. Institutionalized for most of their lives, they eventually were able to go out on their own. What explains their gift? In the case of savants, the brain senses a deficit in one area and compensates by greatly strengthening other areas. Dr. Darrell Treffert is an expert on savant syndrome and author of Extraordinary People.
The savants we've studied have a left brain injury with a right brain compensation. So the skills that you see in the savant are right brain: art, music, unconscious calculating. In other words, the fellow who can compute prime numbers has no idea how he does it. He just is able to do it.
And in most cases, it is a he that does it because males are 6 times more likely to have savant syndrome than females.
The reason why there is this male dominance, not only in savants, but in autism, in stuttering, and in learning disabilities and hyperactive children, has to do with the neurotoxic effect of circulating testosterone in the fetus to produce left hemisphere damage with right brain compensation.
Hi, I'm Joe.
Joseph Sullivan's family of Huntington, West Virginia, has waged a heroic struggle with autism since Joseph was born in 1960.
I knew he was different very soon. He didn't behave like the other children. And the doctor said, he's autistic. And I said, what does that mean? He said, he will always be a little odd.
Encouraged because he began talking at an early age, Joe's parents were all the more surprised when he suddenly stopped talking at age 18 months.
I still didn't worry a great deal because he could do so many things that the other kids hadn't done at that age, that I thought we just had somebody unusually bright on our hands who decided not to talk. Besides, he was number 5, and he had to compete. You tell yourself all these things until after a while you can't tell yourself that anymore. You have to go looking for some answers.
While his mom went searching for answers to tough questions, Joe began to exhibit some extraordinary talents that continue to this day. Like the Finn brothers, Joseph is what is known as a calendar calculator.
How about November 6th, 1963?
Whose date?
Whose date? That's my husband's birth date.
No, what's the date again?
November 6th, 1963.
That was on Wednesday.
He also has perfect pitch.
Hooked on Broadway.
And a remarkable gift for calculations.
47 times 57.
2,679.
Good. Let's say 62 times 87.
62 times 87.